All right. Well, what we're looking at here is a Yamaha PM-1000 individual module from a Yamaha PM-1000 console. One thing you may notice about this right off the bat is that it has been modified. This has been, like it used to have switches here that just switched which of the four master sections that it would go to. This one has a knob, a potentiometer, so that you could send a variable amount. Not exactly sure why, but I mean, there's advantages to that. And you can see, looking right here at the channel number, this one came out of a big console, 32 channel. From what I understand and from what I've seen, they're not too common, the whole consoles. Most people have broken them up, but ones that I see tend to be 16 channels. But I know they had 16, 24, and 32. And I believe they all had 4 master sections. And then a single talkback and a monitor. And then a headphone amp for the cue. So let's go through this thing real quick. All right, so I recapped one of these consoles and modified one. Gosh, it's probably been 12 years ago. Been at least 10 years ago. And I did a pretty good job. I sold probably a couple hundred kits on eBay. In fact, you may have seen my kits on there. Those kits make a big improvement to the sound. I feel like I did a good job with that kit as far as it's definitely an improvement. I am going to rethink it again this time around, though. Well, you know, it's a decade on, and my knowledge of circuits is better. My knowledge of circuit design is better. And so I want to make a superior kit, and I want to make a superior mod here. So I have 4 of these modules in total, and I'm going to rack them. I'm going to rack all 4 of them up. As you can see, I already have this 2U box. I think it's a Power Metal box. I'm not sure. I'll have to double check on that. But it's got an aluminum face and a steel body. It's got these little handles in the front to protect knobs if it ever rolls over or something. But I want to make this thing the best I can, and I want to use as much of the circuit as I can because there's a lot of stuff going on here. And usually when people rack these up, they don't use everything. Like, for instance, there are 2 echo sends here, and people usually just pretend like those aren't even there. A lot of times they even just hack that off. But I mean, you've got 2 gain stages here, which are essentially like little guitar boost pedals. And my plan, well, I'll get to that. But basically, I'm going to try to use everything, including there's this phase switch here, and obviously I'm going to probably try to move that. This mod, I'm not going to keep that. I mean, there's no point in me using that for anything. I mean, because it's not going to be in a console. These are going to be obviously racked up and used independently outside the console. All right, so we'll go ahead and do this whole thing here. I'll show you around. Maybe you're not familiar. This will be good if people are just for the first time and finding out about these modules. So you've got this Q switch at the very bottom here. What this does is this essentially sends a signal no matter what the fader is set at. It bypasses that and sends it to the headphone amp. Obviously, kind of a crude setting. But what they would call it now is a PFL or a pre-fade listen. It's essentially what the Q is here. And then, so that's that's a non-latching switch. It's just a temporary switch. So I don't think I'm going to find a way to use that. I can't think of anything to do with it. The only thing I could think of is if I used it as the power switch and it pushed and went to a relay or something to actually turn it on and turn it off. That might be a fun way to use it, but I don't think so. I think I'm just going to use a regular old toggle switch. So of all the stuff on here, besides the modified channel outputs or master sends. I'm probably not going to use this guy. Then we've got this fader here, and I know it looks like a linear fader. It moves up and down, but it's a fun little design, and I've never seen anyone do this before or since. This seems like something Yamaha came up with. It's quite ingenious, though, and a lot cheaper than having to spend money on actual linear faders, because they were pretty expensive at the time, and that's because consoles were just being, dang it, there we go. Consoles were just being developed in the early 70s, and some parts were really expensive. Like, the kind of consoles the Beatles used have really interesting faders. Damn it. All right, there we go. Stay focused. And they're like aircraft faders, like what they would have on an old airplane. And those were way expensive. Anything that's aircraft grade. Anyway, so the linear movement actually turns this aluminum thing, and it goes to a regular old potentiometer. And this one is labeled as a D10K? What the fuck is it? Pardon my French. What is a D? Is it reverse? Reverse? I don't know. Is it reverse audio? I mean, I know A is audio or logarithmic, and B is linear. What the heck is D? I mean, I'll figure it out. But like I said, so this is just a regular potentiometer, even though it's a D, and it's being turned this way. Kind of fun. So when I reuse it, I'm going to take this pot out of here and just mount it to the face. And I'm probably going to mount it to this side, on this side, or wherever that winds up being. We'll get to that. So then you've got so that fader functions as your output pot or your trim. All right. And the way this circuit worked, this would go to a line amp, and then the line amp would feed the master switches, which are now master knobs on this mod. And let me just give it a moment. Whoever did this mod did a really nice job on it. Like, they matched the font pretty close, if not exactly the same. The lines, I mean, it looks like Yamaha might have done this mod, but I'm pretty sure they didn't. Just because the knobs have magic marker. That's their like the plate itself is very well done. You can see the way it was done here. And there's some kind of other mod done right here to this echo send. I'm not exactly sure what that is. Some kind of compensation. I don't know. And then the wiring's done pretty good. I mean, I don't think it's Yamaha that did it. I think someone just did a good job on it. Other than the magic marker. All right, so back to the tour. So this is your little label for the channel. It's a channel 27. This is essentially your pad. Now, this functions much like a lot of other high-end consoles where, you have gain switches, and then this is your output fader. And it goes all the way from, there are 3 line level settings, or 3 or 4. There's a couple of line level settings where part of this multi-switch actually switches the first gain stage out of the circuit and goes straight to the second stage, which feeds the EQ. So there's a couple different, starting with +4, and the label actually works backwards. It's telling you what the what it wants. So it's not telling you how much. It's not telling you how much gain it's giving you. It's telling you what it wants. Like it appears like this is the loudest setting, +4, but it's not. It's actually the lowest setting. It wants to see +4 in order to balance out. And then all the way to -60. -60 means it's 60 decibels of gain to get you back to your 0. Really neat. I like it. It's repeatable. I like that it has essentially it's... so the cool thing is different settings have different sounds. Because it's not just different gain staging. It also bypasses a whole stage. Very cool. I like that. Okay, so you've got, next to that, you've got this three-way switch, which is your high-pass filter. Here, it's out of the circuit. This rolls off. I don't know what the curve is, but it's pretty steep. And it's got a roll off at 40 and a roll off at 80. Next to that, you've got a three-way mid-range switch, and that corresponds to this mid-range pot. And it's set to either 1K, 2K, or 4K. Okay. And then you've got, so what those are, which is really interesting, and why people really like these PM-1000s, and if you know circuits, these are inductors, which are kind of like little transformers, and they use those in the circuit to, to help the EQ curve. They work with capacitors and resistors to set where your EQ point is. So the bass control has its own inductor that essentially boosts or cuts the bass. Then the mid-range you can actually select from three different ones. I don't know which three they are, but essentially the switch toggles between three different ones. Okay. And then the treble is just a boost and cut. I don't think the treble even uses one of the inductors. As far as I'm concerned, I think the treble just goes. It starts at 10K. Like it's not labeled, but it starts around 10K, and it either boosts or cuts 10 dB. Well, that's what it says. Who knows how accurate that is? These things weren't so clinical back in the day. They were just supposed to sound good, and people didn't really care so much about the numbers. That's why when you see 1K, 2K, 4K, I mean, that's not any kind of industry standard. And, the way they've got the gain settings is not any kind of standard. There really weren't standards back then. Heck, this thing is old enough where it could have had female XLR inputs. Male XLR inputs and outputs, which was the standard for a long time before they figured out they could daisy chain XLR cables. And then inputs became female and outputs became male. Duh. But I digress. So you've got your bass control, your mid-range control, and your treble control. And those are all on nice smooth pots. And your last two settings here are Echo 1 and Echo 2. And like I was saying, and you're like, what, Echo? Like, did it have its own reverb built in or something? Or delay? Or, it's funny, this is back in the days before they really had lots of effects. Usually an effect just meant echo. An echo would have been some kind of delay and or reverb. And to answer your question, no, the consoles did not have these built in. So these are essentially two different effects sends. They could technically be aux sends too. You could use them however you wanted, really. That's and then I already showed you here. You got your outputs to go to the master sections, and then finally you've got a phase switch. So that's the tour of the front. Now I can show you around the circuit itself. So we already talked about the Q. That's a temporary switch. We talked about the fader. That's a D10K pot. Right here you've got a input transformer, and it's labeled. Oh man, I used to know this in my sleep. GA80071, and this thing can take quite a bit of signal. Because of the way the settings were designed to be able to take line level in addition to mic level, this thing can handle a lot. It's tough to clip this thing. But it also still sounds good on microphones. From what I was told, this is a 600 to 600 ohm. And then, so starting here, you've got your discrete solid state circuit. And a lot of people call this the Japanese Neve or Japanese or whatever, implying that it's some kind of clone. It's not. It uses a lot of the same design philosophies as a Neve or even an early API or any of those other, early 70s, late 60s even designs. that had, solid state, discrete solid state. So this is a discrete solid state circuit. There is no ICs. There's inductor-based EQ all throughout. And there's no output transformer because the output transformers are on the actual console, obviously. And there were not direct outs on these individual channels. Now, a lot of people would modify these and do that, but they did not come like that. So this is your input capacitor, which actually couples the transformer to the first stage. This is your first preamp, and it uses two cascaded transistors and into a push-pull circuit, and then that push-pull circuit goes to the EQ circuit, which has a makeup gain stage right here, and then goes to all the inductors circuit, and then here, after the EQ circuit, the signal actually splits, and it goes to the main. So this, you may notice that these two gain stages look really similar, and they're practically identical. There's a slight difference. So when I was telling you before about the switch, the input switch that selects, your gain, when it bypasses this, which is your first gain stage, it goes directly to this, right? Well, this then feeds all three of these, and you've got three separate circuits here. You've got this one, which is very similar to the first stage, which has two cascaded transistors and into a push-pull circuit. And then the output of this push-pull circuit is actually what goes to the console itself via the multi-connector thing. Did I show you that? I didn't show you that. So yeah, these have a neat multi-connector, kind of like an old computer. I don't know how many of you would know what an old 70s computer would look like, but a lot of times they had the edge connectors on the cards that were kind of like this. And then this thing right here is your ground bus, which just hooks up straight to the metal chassis. Okay. So you've got your main output here, which is pretty hot, all things considered, for a console channel. And then you've got two other stages here, which are the actual gain stages. Like the echo sends are not just coming out of the same thing as this. They're separate outputs. So the echo send actually comes from, like I said, the signal is connected here to all three, to the input of this stage, and then the input of this stage, and the input of this stage. So that each of them can offer their own output, separate from each other. They aren't related at all. Okay, so that's the tour. These right here, of course, and these look identical because they are. Echo 1 and Echo 2 are the same circuits. And yeah, that's your Yamaha PM-1000 in stock form. Next video, I will start talking about the modifications I'm going to do for this thing. And we'll go from there.